This next video in our ratio, proportion, and percent module is on percent problems, and I may divide this into two videos. We'll see as we go along. So there may be two videos for this section. Let's look at the top of your notes. It says writing percent problems as equations. So to do percent problems, there are two different ways. There is the equation method, which we're going to start with. It's my preferred method, I'm going to be honest. And then there is the proportion method, and that's what most of you were taught in middle school, and a lot of you will like that way better. You have to be able to do both of them. So in order to do it as an equation, percent problems, you have to know the meaning of these three words. So of means multiply, is means equals, and what means x, or the variable. And we're just going to translate into an equation. And the first couple we're not even going to work. We're just going to translate. So it says translate to an equation. 1.2 is 30% of what number? Whoops, I skipped one. Translate to an equation. 5 is what percent of 20? So I rewrote it here with things kind of spread out so you can see how each one translates. So 5 is just 5. Okay? Is, we said, means equals. The word what, or what percent, is our x. And of times 20 is 20. Now that's a little bit awkward. 5 equals x 20. It's perfectly correct, but the more accepted way to write it would be 20x if you were actually going to work it. We're not going to. But that's how we're translating. All right, one other thing you need to know in translating to an equation is that you can't use a percent in an equation or a proportion. You have to change it to a decimal for the equations, and you change it to a fraction for the proportion. So 30% is 0.30, or just 0.3 if you prefer. So let's translate. 1.2 is 30%, put it as a decimal. I'm going to drop that 0. Of means time, what number means the variable, and you have it. Simple as that. Okay, one more. Translate to an equation. What number, so that's going to be x, is equals 25% as a decimal is 0.25 of, I'm going to use multiplication this way rather than the dot. When you have a decimal and you use a dot for multiplication, it's confusing. So I'm going to use parentheses. 0.008. Notice I dropped that leading 0. And that's it. So take a minute, work these three on your own. So pause this video and then come back and check yourself. I'm assuming that you have done that. And so what you should have had here is 0.38 of 200 is what number? Here, 40%, or just 0.4 if you prefer, of what number is 80? And here, what percent of 85 is 34? Or more conventionally, 85x equals 34. That's the way you would want to write that. I hope you got those right. Just a little note here. I don't generally teach it this way, but some of you may notice this, and I think it may come up in my math lab or math Excel. To solve problems with the equation method, just take note that the percent times the base equals the amount. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, what the amount is. The base is how much you have altogether. The amount is what you're talking about. So here we have what number, I'm going to use n this time, is 35% of 60. So the percent is right there. The base is 60. The amount is what number in this case. Okay, so if you see that, like if you ask for help in my math lab or math Excel, that may come up. Now, if I was actually going to work this, then all that I need to do to solve for n is I need to multiply 0.35 times 60. So let's do a quick review of multiplying decimals. which was in our first module. I like to hang the 0 over to the edge, if there's one on the edge of my multiplier, because then I can just bring it down and do this in one step. 6 5s are 30, carry a 3. 6 3s are 18, and 3 is 21. I've got 2 decimal places, so I have n equals 21. Now we're actually going to set some up as equations and work them. So starting with example 8 on the second page of your notes, let's set them up first and then do the work. It says 85%, so 0.85 of, multiply, 300 is what number? This is another one where I just have to multiply. So 0.85, there's 2 zeros that I can hang over. It's such a great shortcut. Bring those zeros down and multiply. 3 5s are 15, carry a 1. 3 8s are 24, and 1 is 25. 1 2 places, and I end up with x equals 255. Very straightforward, which is why I like this method. 12%, 0.2 of what number? X is 0.6. Now this one is different because to solve for x, I have to divide by 0.12. And here we are back again dividing decimals. So it's 0.12 into 0.6. So as a reminder of how we divide decimals, I move the decimal point to the end. I move it the same number of places inside and bring it up, fill in. And now it's just 12 into 60 is 5. So x is 5 because it goes evenly. This one is tricky. 13 is 6.5%. How am I going to change that to a decimal? I'm going to take that 6.5% and I'm going to write it like this. Isn't that also 6.5%? Now to change it to a decimal, we drop, move away. So it's 0.065 of what number? Times x. To solve, you divide by the coefficient of the x. So 0.065 into 13. Move this to the end. So take this one that's implied there, move it 1, 2, 3 places, bring it up, fill in with zeros. Now, does 65 go into 13? No, but it does go into 130 2 times. Be careful where you put the 2. It actually makes 130, but we're not finished because we're not up to the decimal point. Bring your 0 down, divide, 0. Bring your 0 down, divide, another 0. And we get x equals 200. So that one was a little tricky. Here, this is the one disadvantage, I think, of the equation method, and that is when the thing that's missing is the percent, and I'll show you why. It says what percent of 12? So x times 12 is 9. Write it conventionally would be 12x equals 9. Divide both sides by 12. X equals 9/12, but we have to change that now to a percent because we're looking for a percent and it's a fraction, and we know that in order to do that we have to first write it as a decimal. Now I can help myself by simplifying this to 3/4. Now I know what percent 3/4 is. It's 75%. But if you don't, then you're going to have to divide 4 into 3 and first have it turn out to be a decimal. And when you do that division, you'll see that it comes out evenly, but this is my decimal. I now have to convert that to my percent. So again, it's easier to have a few of those basic ones memorized. Here's another one where I'm looking for the percent. So it's going to be a decimal first and then changed to a percent. So 78 is what percent of 65? To solve that, we divide both sides by the coefficient of x. So 65 into 78. That goes once. I'm going to add a decimal point, bring it up, add a 0, bring it down. That actually goes twice. Now remember, we're looking for the percent. We just got the decimal. That has to be converted to a percent by moving it 2 places and adding a 0. So we end up with 120%. Yes, I think I would like to do the proportion part of this lesson as a separate video. So I'm going to stop it now, and then you can look